Hello there everyone, so let's talk about the Dwarves of Khazad-Dûm campaign. Now this is a very interesting campaign because of the initiate start. So I'll explain that they have basically a different campaign than everyone because they start as a horde and they will have to retake Moria. Now there are two paths and I don't want to spoil those, but I'll explain a little bit in average what happens because I played both to see the differences. So I'm gonna let the pop-up show up and I'll explain you the differences about this. Okay guys? So there you go, Dwarves of Khazad-Dûm, military report, and let me see, what do I start with? So I start with High Lord Balian. That's basically what we have. By the way, Balian's guard is about one of the best bodyguards there are. Just because, you know, yes, they're 33, this number will grow of course, but effective against armor, 10 attack, and 40 defense. This is defense like the trolls, like the Olokai. These guys don't die easily. I mean, they need to be effective against armor units all the time to even die. So they will hang on forever. I've seen them by themselves. They destroyed 500, 600 orcs. You know, when I captured Moria, it's just an amazing unit. It's kind of bad that you can't recruit too many. So let's go over here, and actually I can recruit these Tail Cavalry next turn. Do note that he has the stubbornness of the dwarves. It's so good. It locks the army morale. Just use these as soon as you see that your army may be routing. Just kind of difficult with this, but still, it's interesting. It does provide some fatigue, but it's really cool. It's really cool. Now let's end the turn. I want the pop-up to show up. You'll see the arrows there all the time when playing this campaign. So it's a very long campaign just because of this. Because in the first turns you're just going to try and capture Moria, and you'll have these decisions to make, and you want to make them as best as possible. So there you go. You can go through the Vale, or you can go through the woods. This actually explains it over here in length, but basically it's this. You can use the longer route by first passing along the footfields of the Erin Mithrin and then turning south through the Endrin Vale. It will be safer, but it will take more time, and we have a higher chance of alerting the Misty Mountain Lords of our mission. The second option is through the forest of Mirkwood, and Balian knows from experience of the dangers within. Blah blah blah. Many attacks should we spot on this route. It is true, but it will be swifter, and the orcs will infest our home will not see us coming. So, lastly, keep in mind that while our starting gold is well funded by the leftover shares of our dwarves, the longer the quest, the less gold we shall have to rebuild Moria quickly. So this is actually what I would go into. If you feel very comfortable playing with a dwarf faction against any kind of enemy army, it's actually really interesting to play the short path. You will have less, you will arrive with more money, you will arrive with less units because the enemies are more dangerous, and there's also some very difficult battles. I'm talking about there is one battle that you lose a lot of units and that weakens your push in Moria, and you will have to take it by attacking and assaulting that. So the different start is that you will actually be able to be on Moria and probably have the money to rebuild the mines so that you can have the money there. You will also have lower units, so you can't immediately start capturing other stuff. If you take the long path, it's much easier battles, less battles inclusive, but you will arrive much later on without money to build the mines, so you kind of have to wait, or you have to try and conquer so that you can have mine to build up your cities. So it's a different, you can weight that on different possibilities. Of course it has the replay value. You can always start with one and then later on you'll start and you'll use the other route. Now after you capture Moria, you can get peace with the orcs of the Misty Mountains. Do note that. In terms of finances, they're good after mines, but you actually require a fast conquest. Of course, I'm going to decline here. It selects one path. In this case, it will select the mountainous path. I mean the wood path, and you will have an encounter or something that will happen on each one of these arrows. So you can actually count them, and you'll see the difference there. There we go. There's Moria. Alright. There we go. You will have to follow exactly the instructions, so you will always have to click on the arrow there. Now you do start with 40,000k, you start with these units, you'll receive further units during the path, but don't count too much on them. Yeah, but pretty much it's just let me take the army and go through. You do start with some Dragon Slayers of Arid Mithrin, which is as it is, you know, a unit that you can send against virtually anything and they will come out victorious. Well, don't send them against effective against armor units because they will cause way too many casualties to these guys, but still. Now, you don't start with diplomats, you don't start with spies, you will have to capture Moria and start everything from the scratch. Moria is a very important and good place, so it will provide you with a lot of income, by the way, so don't worry too much about that. Now, I would like to go and talk about the units, and for that I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to go into the custom battles just to show that. Hopefully it won't crash. There we go, it didn't. That's perfect, because if not I would have to go there. So let's talk about their units. Now you have some Dwarven engineers. I'm not even going to read everything, but I'll just state that there's way too much anti-cavalry and armor units. I would honestly not build, just choose not to build anything that doesn't have the effective against armor or that doesn't have the skilled against mounts. And even then I believe that most of them have. Like, oh, there we go. There's the unit that I wouldn't build too much. The Dwarven Volunteers. Then you have the Dwarven Sentries, the first pike that you have. Now, do note, this is a pike unit with 3 and defense of 11. If you remember the Dunlands, they had the wolf spikes of 5-15 or something like that. So do remember that this, for a very early unit, it's very interesting, you know, that it has good stats, or rather medium stats, I would say. Then you have Balian's Guard, I've shown that. You also have the Legion units, both the Legion Shield Guard, the Zenith, the Legion X Guard. So basically, let's talk. You have an basically they're armed with an axe, but it's kind of like their swords unit because it's very well armored, but it doesn't cause any effective against armor or anything. I wouldn't take too many of these guys. I would get these guys to fight against mounted units, and I would get the Legion X Guard because they're effective against armored. 821. These guys can face against anything. It's no problem. Then you have the Zenith Guard, very well armored. It's pretty much the same thing as Balian's, but Balian's Guard has effective against armor. Do note that. You have the Hammers of Gundabad. If you take Gundabad, get these guys. It's just an amazing unit. Effective against armor with a 10-28. It's really cool. You also have Khazad-Dûms because you'll get Moria, and these guys are the, let's say, the exception to that rule that I stated to you guys. Like, they don't have effective against cavalry or armor, but they're still really powerful units because an attack of 12, come on, that's interesting. Have the Dragon Slayers that you've seen, skilled against mounts, they inspire nearby troops, they frighten nearby enemy infantry. 1433, that's kind of like bodyguard status, or even more higher than that. Have the First Legion, which is very interesting. It is skilled against mounts, so you can always get these guys as well. Do note that for now you've seen that there's not a lot of pikes. It's more of a heavy melee infantry unit, is the kind of roster. Have the Dwarven Travelers. By the way, you don't see the effectiveness of their range or anything through here, but these guys aren't really that good. They're weaker than standard archers from most other factions. They're rather good actually in melee and defense, so you know it's kind of to upset that. And you also have, of course, in the mountain regions you can get your beast raptors. Do note one thing: these guys are not crossbowmen. They are not crossbowmen, but you see the effective against armor. It's a archer with effective against armor, with good melee and good defense. Just get these guys as soon as you can, because they will be awesome to have these guys in the army. Like, if you didn't need units that can deal with armor. You know, just go against armored units, because if not, you're wasting that. You also have Kassadin Reclaimers. The missile 13 is very effective against armor, and yeah, of course, because it's a javelin. And this is, I would consider these Kassadin Reclaimers much better than the Kassadin Guardians. Even though their stats are lower, the fact that they have the javelins just convinces me too much. Skilled against mounts and effective against armor as well. Like, you know, if you have to choose between these guys and these guys, go with these guys. They're versatile. Of course, you have the ballistas and you have the Dwarven Catapults. Dwarven Catapults have an additional situation. They can actually grape shot, as you can see there, which is much more interesting. Now, you do have the Sons of the Fallen, again, a skilled against mounts unit. And that's about it. So I would like to explain that, as you can see, there's no cavalry! Only mercs. And you won't even be in the position where you can recruit those mercs because you're going down to Moria. You'll have some cavalry units if you can reach Dale's places or whatever, or even Rohan's places to recruit some volunteers. So I strongly advise that you just send a general to capture or to get those mercenaries into you. Get military alliances, get the treaties, the military access treaties if you can, even if you have to pay for them, because you'll need those cavalry units from the merc places. Now, you do have some expos, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, these guys are not considered expos, actually. Yeah. But that's still really interesting. Now, what doesn't state here is how expensive these guys actually are. So I'm going to showcase just a unit of these guys. You see the Florins there that it cost? 1,400, 1,380, 1,200. It's always above 1,000 with those guys. I mean, 900. And that's not even the upkeep. The upkeep for these guys is like 500 or 600. So they're very expensive, and that will be a big problem. Now, you do have good finances, especially if you start taking on the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, because of all the mines. Still, it's not going to be easy in the early game to have lots of units, so be careful, pick your battles carefully, and that will be it. Strongly suggest this faction to test out a Dwarven faction, not just because of the interesting faction idea that you have to walk, you know, but also because of all these units. It's one of the strongest rosters in Middle-earth, I would say. And yeah, that's about it. Okay, so that is it for these faction overviews. I hope you guys enjoyed those, and I'll see you guys on my episodes on my campaigns. So thank you guys for watching, and bye bye. Cheers.